But we're starting today by meeting a mother who's challenging the norm by refusing to tell her friends and family if her 4-year-old is a boy or a girl.
Leah Borromeo hasn't even told her child what gender they are, and she joins us now to tell us why. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning,
Very
Leah.
nice
Thanks
to
for
see
joining
you.
us.
So this was something that you decided you were going to do long before Riley was born.
Very much so, yes. It's
Why?
because my partner and I were both quite committed to equity, and we both saw and observed how we were raised as children, and how we kind of got a little bit annoyed. So when I was being brought up, I remember telling my mom, why, or asking them, like, why are boys always allowed to do everything they want to do, but girls just have to sit still and be quiet? And for me, that seemed really unfair. And the same thing for my male partner as well, because, he was undergoing a lot of things as a kid, and he was being told and being restricted from doing certain things within, his upbringing, not by his parents, but by other people presuming that, of course, he was going to be good at sports, of course he was going to be doing, of course he was. But this was all the stuff that I just didn't sit right with us.
Right.
And
So you decided that you were going to raise your child gender-free. Can you just explain exactly what that involves and what that means?
so for us, it means not telling anybody necessarily what or ascribing a gender to them. So it's not saying you are one of an either binary. So their sex is their sex. And so when we are at the doctor's or anywhere else, it's kind of like, okay, this, or with a passport, for instance, or their birth certificate, the sex is their sex. The gender, of course, is how you feel inside. So what we're more concerned about and what we're focused on is making sure that they are able to discover what they are inside. And so other parents who are in the sort of gender creative community or in the gender free community, some of them do use a binary pronoun, but they still allow their children the freedom to play and to dress and to act in whatever way they choose. But one thing we've observed about that is once you assign a gender to somebody, immediately people will change their behavior. And we noticed this in the delivery room when we heard people talking about newborns having such strong muscles and being brave little soldiers and being delicate princesses. And it's like, they're just babies. They're both strong because they made it this far, but they're also very delicate because they need us to survive.
Is that a problem, though? Do you think it's a problem when people will describe the newborn baby that might be a boy as saying, doesn't he look strong, he's going to be really brave, and a little girl or a newborn girl as she looks like a beautiful princess? Is that a bad thing?
It's in an isolated circumstance, I don't think anything is necessarily bad. But once it just keeps getting repeated, and once it keeps being reiterated, then there is a chance that this child will only see themselves as pretty. They will only see themselves as this, and they will only see themselves as strong. And then maybe they're not. Maybe they don't feel that way. And that, for us, is something that we didn't want to do. So we've used pretty much everything in both.
So when Riley was born, and you obviously, you spoke to your family and they must have been so happy. What did you say to them at that moment? And were they surprised when you didn't say, oh, we've had a little boy or we've had a little girl?
Oh, I mean,
how did they react?
We had a lockdown baby, so it was a little bit stranger than other circumstances. So Riley's first interaction with any family member was through a Zoom call.
Right.
There goes my screen-free childhood. Literally.
That's a whole nother battle.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. So when we did that, it was like, hello, hi, and I was just tired. And Riley was just kind of, nuzzling, half asleep and cooing and everything else. And then somebody in my family just went, a boy or a girl? And I said, well, they haven't told us yet.
And what was the response?
I think that kind of, it wrong-footed some of them, because there's quite a few on the screen. So I couldn't really see which ones. I just kind of responded to the person who was asking. And someone said, but you must know, you must, and I went, no.
And interestingly, when you say they, you don't mean the midwives, the doctors, you mean Riley.
Yeah.
Riley hasn't told you yet whether they are a boy or a girl.
Correct.
Which is an extraordinary sort of position to take. I mean, it's so unusual to hear. We're both parents, we've all been there, your family are waiting, you want to know. Whether you wait to find out whether it's a surprise or not. I wonder how complicated it's been, though, Leah, for you and your partner, and equally for Riley. Riley's 4 now, right? So how complicated is it navigating a world where you've chosen to bring them up like that?
So in the sort of admin stakes of things, because you have to get a birth certificate, you have to do all of that clerical stuff. If they ask for a sex, we provide it. If they ask for a gender, usually what we do is we'll call them up or we'll send them an email and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. And oftentimes they'll be like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that we put that on the form, because they just presumed that sex equals gender and gender equals sex. So oftentimes what they did is they either say, well, you don't have to answer that, or here's a third option. So most often, I'd say about 90% of the time, people are, and sort of, you know, even institutions, like our doctor, for instance, they offered us another option. Back in the day, the American government also offered us another option.
Yeah.
So,
which I think sounds actually doable when you're in a controlled environment like that, and when you're, you know, with Riley most of the time. But when Riley then has to go to school, what is that going to be like for them?
Yeah, well, we're starting school in September.
Right.
And so we delayed them by a year because they were summer born, and we thought, hey,
They're late
just,
for the year,
let's just give them another year to play.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when we were at nursery, for instance, the nursery was like, oh, we've not encountered this before.
Okay.
Let's bring you in and let's have a conversation. And then they brought in other speakers to also have a conversation about it. So all the staff and all the parents and everyone in the wider nursery group suddenly got hip to it. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's really good. And other people were really quite accepting of it. And so they just took it in their stride.
There is a moment, though, isn't there, I think, Leah, then people will be sitting at home. We have lots of parents watching the show with parents, and they'll say, look, when your children are in nursery and 4, it's lovely, but the kids don't necessarily notice so much. They run around and it's all easy. As you go to school and they get a bit older, it gets more complicated, and there's older kids as well.
And you can't protect them so much.
And all you really want to do is make their lives as easy as possible.
Yeah.
What do you say to people that will look at you and what you and your partner have decided to do with Riley and say, you're not making their life easy, this is making their life more complicated?
I can totally hear that. And, you know, we have had not much, because we chose the primary school that they're going to be going to because of its accepting and open and sort of
approach
to kind of educating kids. And a lot of the children there are already in that sort of mindset. So one of the things that we really want to do fundamentally now is to build up Riley's resilience and to build up their ability to be able to answer this for themselves.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's like, so what about this? Why aren't you doing this? Aren't they traumatized? Aren't they in some way shocked? Or aren't you doing them a disservice? And it's like, ask them. Because they are now more increasingly able to just say who they are. If a
They're
child
only
in the
4,
play,
though. I mean, Leah, at some point, Riley's going to be a teenager.
Yeah.
And we know the complications that come with being a teenager. And then if they look back and say, I can't believe you complicated my... That would be my concern as a parent. You want to try and get them there, arm them with the ability. I think what you're talking about, making them resilient, is a really, really fantastic quality to be able to help your child with. But that's what I can imagine people at home saying, this is going to get so complicated. Are you doing this for Riley, or are you doing this for yourself and for your partner to try and...
That's a really valid question, a really valid point to ask. And what I would come back on that is, who has not had a complicated teenage life? Who has not had an issue with how they have always been brought up? So what we're trying to do is trying to in some way denude it from that complication. So we have quite a lot of friends who didn't necessarily appreciate being put in certain dresses or being treated in certain ways.
So you think the way you're going to do it is going to lessen the complications?
We hope. Everything's going to be complicated.
Sure.
We're looking, this morning I had to say, Riley, please eat your cereal at least 15 times. I resorted to bribery. So there are so many things that are complicated. And now small people, small problems, big people, big problems.
Yeah.
And I know this will get harder It doesn't get easier, it always gets different.
Yeah. And when you preempt the future, what do you see? Is Riley going to essentially choose?
If they want to.
Right.
The pressure isn't on them to choose. They don't
Right.
have to.
OK.
If they feel they need to,
Yeah.
they will.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people have already asked, and occasionally they'll say, oh, well, so-and-so says, these kids wear trousers, these kids wear dresses, these kids play with this, and these kids play with that. And I said, well, what do you think? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about somebody saying that to you and saying that you can't do that just because you look a certain way? I was like, that's not fair.
No, it's not fair, and I don't think anybody watching would think any boy or girl shouldn't be allowed to do whatever they want to do, regardless of their gender that they choose to be.
Running in the road, you can't do that.
No, please
yeah.
don't do that.
It's fascinating, Leah. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. Wish you and your partner and Riley all the best. It's going to be exciting when they go to school in September as well. It's a big moment.
Whole
isn't
new
it?
world.
Whole new world.
I'm so nervous.
Yeah, you will be.
As any new
so
mummies.
nervous.
As any new mummies.
And Riley will be equally nervous, but very excited as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, hello. Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload tons of new content every single day. So hit the subscribe button, like all the videos, and don't miss out. We'll see you in the morning.